Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with John Little. He's been on the channel before. So, John, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm thankful you I think I invited myself on the channel, so I apologize for being so, what do you call that when you like invite yourself over to a friend's house?
I don't know.
Having no shame. Having no shame.
That's all right, but I mean, we want to look at silver today. And before you start with your story about silver, the U.S. government, I want to give my 2 cents, be a little bit devil's advocate. And I know silver, in terms of price, has been frustrating the last 3 years. And even for me, I mean, I've been buying silver since 2003. And you got to be very patient. And the other thing I would say, I buy silver because I like the silver coins. I buy bullion and I buy numismatic coins. I think it's a good way to collect things, to save, because you don't really want to get rid of it. And hopefully silver will do what it should do, which is keep its purchasing power. So many of you might ask after this presentation that John is going to give. You know, we've been talking about this for years, if not decades. You know, when is this going to happen? So just wanted to put that out there, John. And you've got like a theory, which I don't think it's a theory because I've looked into this. I don't know if you've heard of Charles Savoy. He's looked at the silver stealers and how the silver users get the bullion banks to manipulate the price lower for them. So I'll let you take over now and talk about how silver is important to the U.S. government and to like waging war, right?
Yeah, I think the whole thesis started, it's not, and by the way, your original intro is spot on. I mean, even if I didn't have this thesis, I would still believe in the characteristics that you just brought up for sure. And plus, you know how to say numismatic. That's a very hard word. It took me a year to figure that one out. But really, silver, when I think of silver, I think of, what we're also confused by price because a derivative simply derives value from an underlying asset. And we know how much volume of paper trading can happen in really 1 or 2 days can equal a whole year of mining activity. And Mario, I've been watching your show for quite some time, and I've seen you interview miners before. You have a very good acumen for business, monetary history, as well as mining. So these all sort of get mired in and enmeshed in this presentation. So if you want to roll through it, this is just like eating chicken in the backyard, though. Please stop me. I'm not like some college academic guy. We're just having a conversation.
So let's start this, and you tell me when you want me to move along. So is this
yeah, just get rid of this. This is just the title.
Yeah. So let's look at the title, though, because it's important. I think silver swindle, silver sequestered by War Department, war profiteers and bankers collude in strategic silver stockpile heist. So that's an interesting title. I spoke today about the 1918 fourth Liberty bond heist, a bond that used to be backed by gold, but then with the Executive Order 6102, those bonds were paid back in paper, no more gold. So there seems to be a lot of heist going through
let's stop right there for a second, because it didn't take a genius for this to get to discovery, because we all draw and we all learn from each other. But starting with Athens versus Sparta, then Rome, then Portugal, then Spain, then French, then Dutch, then English, and now US, every single time the scheme repeats. The French had the rentes, the Spanish had the juros, and your country, the Bank of England, had to go to war against France, and 40 businessmen loaned money to the king. So this is more smoking guns based on that. So yeah, so we got the title out of the way. And
there we go.
And basically war changed quite a bit.
Did I go?
After World War One, no, it's okay. It's all right. I can flow no matter what happens. But when war changes from the chariot can wipe out 10 people, then the tank can wipe out maybe 100 foot soldiers. When we get into modern warfare, a plane can start wiping out in the thousands, or in that case, a Zeppelin. So that's when we start seeing where the government may be pressed for more, not only the silver that's in these planes, every bolt is a silver alloy bolt, but all the bombs, shells, missiles, and it's not just in the delivery systems, but they're also coated in silver. Has a lot to do with the friction and the, I would say the properties that deal with reducing friction. And so there, all I'm doing is saying, here we are, World War I. We all know what happened. And it's not just US. The next slide just shows how many other, these are all the superpowers at the time, and they all have enormous amounts of planes. So it's not just the US that has to engage. And you'll see in the next slide where US sort of is, they're fearful. They're coming out, and this is an old, you had posted some posters just like this I saw on your Facebook recently, old propaganda posters. So this is what kind of got me down the path. And now we'll see that the Trinity Blast, they just made a movie here in the United States in the next slide.
Can I just say one thing? It's a shame all those coins look beautiful and you turning them into bullets to kill people is just
well, no, that's a good point. And there's also confiscation that sort of, why does government confiscate stuff? But so we'll get to that. But I'm living here in Pittsburgh now. My wife works next to this very building. This is actually the aha moment, because I found the brick building on the left had this Bureau of Mines. And I'm thinking, I studied government all my life and I don't remember any Bureau of Mines, or my adult life, I should say. So when I started looking up what the United States Bureau of Mines did, I learned that they were the accounting division for the strategic stockpile of silver, which is similar to when right now we have a strategic stockpile of oil that's also being drained. So on the next slide, I think you'll see that's just a little history there. That Carnegie.
Yeah. What's the other building?
That was a branch campus of the United States Bureau of Mines. So the headquarters are on the right, and then the more modern office was on the left.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah. So then the stockpile, this would be the Fort Knox of gold, equal would be the West Point, New York, here would be the silver stockpile.
Is that where they keep some of the gold as well in West Point, or is this just the silver?
This was just the silver, and then they had some on the West Coast too. And now this is where there's also a mint here in this location, where of course they don't make enough silver eagles. That's where we got into that drain the mint campaign. So
they've shut down this Bureau of Mines, or?
No, yeah, that's what we'll get to. Is It's very interesting, all the timing around when these different government agencies are shut down. But let's get into this amazing raid here. I grew up in New Mexico before moving to Pittsburgh, and would go down to the White Sands missile range where they did the Trinity Blast. They still have the crater there, and the weapons were made in Los Alamos. At University of New Mexico, all the smart kids in the dorm that you would be next to, they were all, they were scientist kids. And of course they kicked your ass on all the tests. It'd be like, there goes the curve as soon as one of those Los Alamos kids comes in. But sorry, I'm wandering off task. That's my way. Anyway, so they had to make 940 magnets to enrich the uranium. It was a process you'll see on the next slide where they used
14,000 tons of silver for each magnet, or?
For each magnet, yeah.
That's a lot of silver.
Yeah, it's a lot of silver. And I didn't believe that at first. So I kept digging. I had to keep digging. You can go to American Scientists. You'll see where I source all this stuff. Now, I don't know a lot about uranium. I studied easy shit in college, like political science and stuff. But in enriching the uranium for the nuclear bomb, the process was to use this electromagnetic field. And that racetrack assembly up at the top, you'll see in the next slide, is sort of a black and white photo of it. And now you can see vaguely the horseshoe shape of a conventional magnet. And the silver was kind of stretched into wire at first, and then a coil, and then the coils make the magnets. So you can see how big that, that could be 40 yards by 20 yards would be a guess. And so when you start thinking about each one having that many pounds of silver, there's no other byproduct in there. It's not like they're mixing it with aluminum and steel or tungsten or lead or zinc or any other alloys. So that's just a picture of that. And then we get into the math.
It's just one of the magnets, and so how many of these do they have?
940.
Of these, they look like mini stadiums. So they had 940 of these.
Oh, no. This would be, no. Each one, there's probably 940 along this track. There may have been.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, believe me, our defense budget is that big. They would do it if they wanted to. So now I'm just sorry. This is I shouldn't have made so many lines, but I'm taking the text showing the 1,000 bars. And you can see the URL up there, Mario. I keep all the URLs in the browser. Oh, yeah.
American Scientist.
Yeah. So everyone can go and look. But 400,000, this is the easiest math in the world. I just added the zeros to get to 4 million ounces of AG.
400,000 bullion bars at is that 1,000 kilos
or 1,000 ounces?
Yeah. 400 million ounces. Okay.
You can buy 1,000. I'm sure Andy Scheckman would sell you one, or my boss, Stephen Gleason. But there are people that still buy.
Yeah.
I don't.
So is this for each of the magnets, or?
Yep. That's it. That's the math. So that, again, now we got to remember, this is just for this particular, I'm going to say it's for one product, which was the test. We're not even getting into the nuclear warheads yet.
For enriching the uranium, right? And do you think, because uranium now, 20% of U.S. electricity is from nuclear energy, so they have to have, I don't know if the uranium is enriched for that. So I'm assuming they have to use.
And there are different ways to enrich it since then, but it doesn't mean that does not negate what has happened, nor
with
new discoveries. Yeah, right. So that's just the text, again, on the same URL, showing that they were wound into the wires, into coils into magnet. And then they go into this great history of how they had to guard it. And then at one point, they didn't need to guard it anymore, because once it was in the form of a magnet that weighed that much, it was pretty much just.
It's interesting that they spent so much silver during World War II, and here in the UK after World War One, the coinage went from being 925 silver, and then in 1920 they took half of the silver out, so it became just 50% silver. And then by 1947, they took all the silver out of our coinage. And in the US, you still had silver, 90% silver until 1964. You kind of wonder if the Americans, told the British, we helped you, give us our silver because we want to keep our coinage silver and you keep the copper nickel. And then by 1964, with Vietnam coming up, they needed to stop that, I think. What do you think about that?
Well, no, that's a good theory. I mean, I think you're going to see with the decline of every empire, the ones we just started from Rome and all those European through you and now US, there is a tendency for I call them the parasitic class. You can call them the ruling class, the political class.
I think parasitic is a really good term, actually.
Oh, okay. I was just throwing that term out there. That's how I feel about them, because they infect the villagers is like you and me, and we're infected with the paper money substitutes. And so I think you're right, spot on.
Should I move on?
Yes, please. So all this is, by the way, I write for the Pickaxe. You can see a little Pickaxe here. And we use this virtual lady, we're calling her Pixie as short. It's like, hey, Siri, but we call her Pixie, like short for Pickaxe.
AI.
So her math, yeah, the AI, I can't afford beautiful Michelle McCory of Kitco or Daniela Cambone, so I got to settle for
Daniela Camboni, she's gone to ITM trading.
Yeah, that's right. And boy, they're smart of that. That Lynette Zhang is a genius too. I mean, that's more brain power. They'd fire me in a day. But so all I do is take the, you can take the 940 magnets or the 14 tons and do the math, how many pounds that is, and then divide the pounds into troy ounces. And there's your 399.8 million. That's not counting a bus bar. And then the next slide, I just add in the bus bar. So boom, you're right at that number. You just add in 3.9 million and the math added up, and I cross-referenced it against, there's other sources, and I'll put that.
What's the bus bar?
Well, a bus bar is usually in, let me give you an example. When I worked in, this is a long description, it usually goes across the top of something that the positive and negative wires are connected to. So that's all a bus bar is.
Okay. Should I move on?
Yes, please.
All right.
So now we get to the mysterious year. Bureau of Mines shuts down in 95, 96, depending on the fiscal year versus calendar year. Meanwhile, the Department of Defense just decides, coincidentally, that it's going to stop reporting military use of silver. And I'm like, what the frick? You know, I can't say the F word. What the F? So they both shut down at the same time. And now I'm starting to smell a rat. And this is when I see a shell game in the next slide. It reminds me of what the mafia does often, Mario, is if you're trying to conceal or obfuscate or muddy the waters or do something murky or underhanded or cover your tracks, organized crime, which I would describe our parasitic class is involved in organized crime, like a crime syndicate. They may have some money in titty bars, some money in, they love the vending machine industries.
Laundry businesses.
Yes, dry cleaners to launder the money. Who's your British director that does those great movies like Snatch? And
yeah, he was married to Madonna, wasn't he? I forgot his name.
Guy Ritchie. Yes, that's him.
But so in 1996, they closed the Bureau of Mines and they stopped reporting.
Yeah, the Bureau of Mines is separate though from Department of Defense. So
yeah, and I guess it's a little bit like the Federal Reserve is stopped. They stopped publishing M3 as well years ago.
Right. It's similar where there's a coordination between the Department of Treasury, the Federal Reserve, which is about as federal as Federal Express. Really, I mean, we know it's a joke.
And it has no reserves either.
That's good.
Should I move on?
Yeah, please. Sorry.
That's all right.
So then you gotta ask when something happens, you gotta just say, well, why? That's just and at this point, I find more sources, and I have them referenced in the later slides, but the CIA comes in around and there's other bureaus that get involved. We're gonna get to the CIA and then the Department of Energy. The CIA says, oh God, we're having a silver shortage. Imagine that. All of a sudden, silver is a critical mineral. So it's always been this way where you have in the federal government, especially, or even local, you have a horde of conflicting, overlapping, confusing bureaucracies, and they oftentimes contradict each other. You know, it's sort of what we talk about as government waste. It kind of leads to that.
So the CIA report, is that from 2022?
That one, you're going to see a copy of it here in a second.
It's like cognitive dissonance. They want to.
That's the gaslighting. Yeah, the cognitive dissonance. Yep.
And then we got the Department of Defense here.
Yep, they're all starting to say we're worried about this silver shortage. So they do the opposite. If you're worried about a silver shortage, let's see what they do. You can go to the next slide.
So what are they saying here about the 1960s?
This is another agency. The NSA is sort of like the CIA. CIA be Central Intelligence, National Security, started a recovery program, which is just sort of, I think, a way of, you'll read in those reports where they are really careful to maybe go back through a few old bombs or scrape the magnets and get all the silver back, but it was totally unsuccessful. The real problem is just all of the use of silver. So USGS has what they start publishing are called a list of critical minerals, and they have this huge list. It's every critical mineral you can think of, but you'll see soon, go to the next slide, how they start leaving silver. You can go through this one. We've already visited that slide. I apologize.
So yes, it's the U.S. Geological Survey, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So they want, that's another pattern, is that usually the more official it sounds, the less it has anything to do with the thing they're trying to regulate.
Yeah. So they stopped saying silver was a critical metal in 96, or?
Yeah, at this point, they pretty much, they stopped even saying that it's used in military. They stopped saying that it's used in aerospace. And we are stuck with these new categories of silver that are measly and minuscule compared to military and aerospace use. They stick us, and you'll see in the next slide, the categories that we're stuck with. I already went to this point about the mafia's obfuscation.
All right, okay.
That was just a metaphor. So here's the new categories. Since we know it's aerospace, we know it's military. Today I wrote a report about how much is used in things like robots and heavy machinery, construction equipment, tanks, submarines, a bunch of other heavy things. But we're sort of stuck with, the USGS has a new template, and it's things like silver in clothing, silver in bandages, silver in mirrors, silver in photography. I'm thinking, when was the last time anyone took an analog photo? Kodak doesn't even do that anymore. Silver in water purification, silver in dental implants, silver in wood treatment. Just read these things. Silver in soldering, silver in inks, silver in pharmaceuticals. So, and we're stuck with these categories year after year after year, because that's the template that if you'll see those blue areas at the top, those are all the years that now the USGS starts publishing a new template for what we're supposed to expect are industrial uses of silver. And yeah, they are. I'm not saying they're not, but they're probably 15 to 25 times less than what aerospace and military and robotics and heavy construction.
And they're not reporting that anymore, or?
Correct. They're just not. They just stopped.
And
say it's for national security.
I see. Could it be it's not because they're using other metals, is it?
You can't. No, for silver, you still, for example, a submarine. The submarine has to go through water. Well, let's just take a nuclear missile. It has to go through outer space. Those are extreme severe weather situations. You can't put a lithium ion battery in a sub. Water, moisture, and lithium ion do not match. That's why during the hurricanes you saw in Florida, did you see any of those photos of Teslas blowing up, Mario? They had them all over the internet. I mean, hey, if it's on the internet, it has to be true. But no, seriously, silver's the only, it's so cheap for them. You got to remember, we'll get to the thesis of why it's cheap. So here we go. A useless table that we're stuck with year after year, starting when they close the U.S. Bureau of Mines and the Department of Defense stopped saying that it's used in defense and aerospace. We're stuck again. Look at those categories. They're so funny. I like the one that says silver clothing. I didn't know that. Are you wearing any silver clothing today, Mario? or only when they film your golf swing, right?
I don't know. Maybe unknowingly my clothes is silver, but I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's I, you know, and this to me is just this one of the smoking guns. There's four that I can
Yeah.
think of in this
And it's
report.
interesting you look at it like this because, you know, even before 2020 and 2021 and Silver Squeeze, it was one of the things that I focused on is that how important silver is, how it's used in so many industries. But at the same time, I wasn't looking, and I knew that it was used for military. It was really important during wars, but it's funny that I wonder if Jeff Christian from the CPM group talks about how silver is important for the military. He probably doesn't. He probably sticks to the USGS template. I don't know if you had heard of Jeff Christian.
I have not heard of him, but I hope to meet if he's a denier. I would love to talk to him someday.
Yeah, well, he's like an ex-bullion bank analyst. And he's an interesting guy. Anyway, do you want to move forward?
Yeah, let's move on. I'm just letting people get used to this template. You will see it from 96 to even next year. You will always, we'll always.
Mine production in the US is that 1,000 metric tons.
Now, I didn't study mining production, but
yeah, but it doesn't seem that much, though. You know that.
No, well, that's the next point.
Yeah,
is they do admit that we're 79% reliant on foreign production. So this is not that important. All this letter shows is that in the 70s, Jesse Helms writes a letter to Gary Hart saying, hey, we're at 139 million troy ounces. And that is, and then you'll see the next slide, or just skip through.
What does it say here? Not required because people probably wartime supply exceeds.
Yeah, they're and now I have a new theory of why they want to wipe out the entire. They'll wipe out the entire thing, just like we're about to see happen.
I remember Gary Hart when he ran for president. Then they had that scandal, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right. You remember his slogan? It's like, you gotta have heart. They'd always show him on a horse, and the guy had never been on a horse. He's just like Robert Redford. They always show these guys in the West, Mario, because they're on a horse or they have a hard hat.
Yeah.
You know, they call him a drugstore cowboy. So there's just some more. That's just for you museum type people.
Thurmond, I remember that guy. He was like in his 90s, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. Then Jesse Helms was probably the most war hawkish, you know, very much.
Yeah, a bit like Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, yeah. This isn't that we can come back to this. I'd like to march forward.
Keep going.
And march forward one more time. This shows that this is it. This is where they're saying, and you can see that I the bullet points, or anyone wants to Google these PDFs, just Google the General Accounting Office, GAO, National Defense Requirements for Silver Stockpile. At this point, they say that that amount exceeds the national defense requirements, which is absolutely false because they're burning through. This is we're at the point now where between the years of, you'll see in the next slide how many wars we've been in, but before we get there, now they move to a new bureau. So we've heard from the CIA, we've heard from the NSA, we've heard from the Department of Defense, we've heard from the Bureau of Mines. They've reassigned things to the USGS, and now DOE comes marching in, Department of Energy, and says and publishes the list, the final list of critical materials. And all I'm saying here is show me the silver. What could be more critical by your own admission, based on shells, bombs, missiles, tanks, fighter jets?
Well, national defense is really important, isn't it? The defense budget is huge.
Right. And then not just defense, but what about this transition to net zero we're supposed to be all giddy about? If, you know, let's just say if that's our energy future, why would you not admit that silver is on that list? And then they admit that the US is 79% import reliant on silver. So if we're 79% import on reliant on silver, how much more critical is our dwindling domestic supply of silver? So this is another example of cognitive dissonance or being gaslit.
Can I say another thing is
Yes.
example, Goldman Sachs and Jeff Curry, he had a report a year or two ago saying, all the critical materials, and he never mentioned silver as well, always copper and all the other things, but never silver.
Yeah, isn't that funny? And gold's not on this list either. And that, which is just insane because and this is another, that'll be my next smoking gun.
I mean, for the Chinese, I don't know if you follow that guy, the Oriental Ghost.
He's the best. Yeah.
He said that for China, silver is really important because of the alternative, renewable energy move, this climate change thing, he said it's so important for China, silver, but to the US, it doesn't seem to be, which is weird.
Doesn't make sense. So here's the CIA archive. I don't have the date of this publication. I think it's 2022. Look. Yeah. So once again, now we're starting to see how it all starts gelling. They admit in the double red line, US being 79% import reliant. So that's like, ooh, that spells trouble for the colony. It'd be like reporting to the king. Mr. King, we have trouble. There's trouble in the United States. But then once again, we look where they obfuscate or muddy up the uses of silver. And we see those same ridiculous, I'm not saying yeah, we all learn.
You're not going to use, I guess if you add 7,500 metric tons for antimicrobial bandages, clothing I mean, most of that.
Look at wood
the military, wouldn't it?
I like wood treatment. I mean, I was thinking, if I were a carpenter, I got to get that silver before I'd head my truck on over to Home Depot.
I guess you've heard of colloidal silver as well.
Sure. I'll try it. I'll try anything.
All right. Okay. So the CIA, I mean, they have a sign in their headquarters, that says the truth shall set you free or something, which seems really ironic that they have that.
Yeah. Can you imagine that Orwell wrote that book and it's just, he didn't expect it to be like the truth or, it was supposed to be fiction, not a documentary. Unbelievable.
Pixie's done a lot of work.
Yeah, she's been connecting these dots, man. I'll tell you what, she's a lot cheaper than Miss McCory too. But one day she'll have me on. It'll be Pixie versus McCory, telling the story. That's my rhyme. Pixie versus McCory, laying out the story. So here we got now. Let's circle back to Manhattan Project. Now these are just tests. This has nothing to do with bombs that are in storage. I added these up. It's close to 1,900 amongst those 8 nations. So we got, I guess, as silver stackers,
how come you haven't got Israel there?
Probably because
that's a joke. They're not supposed to have nuclear weapons, but they do anyway.
Oh, of course they do. Yeah, I know. You mean the extension campus of the United States? Yeah, I know. I don't get it.
Anyway, let's get back to this.
Let's go to the next one. All I'm saying is silver vanishing.
So all those tests, I mean, you spent millions of ounces, right? Just to
correct. Yeah, it's not just on the enrichment of the uranium. It's also on, there's a lot. You can just ask Bard or Chat GPT how much silver goes into these.
10,000 nukes times 14,000 equals 140 million tons. Wow.
Now that's just sitting like, when I lived in New Mexico, I worked at a golf course called Four Hills Country Club, and it was right next to the Manzano Mountains, which is next to Sandia Labs. All the presidents of Sandia Labs played there. I cleaned their golf clubs, working my way through college in the bag room. And the point I'm getting at is they hid most of the United States stockpile of nuclear warheads in these mountains. And I have a picture of that on my website.
Yeah. So this is the silver used, not for the testing, but all the existing nuclear weapons.
Right. And then I got to tell the joke real quick here. It's not that dirty, but you play golf, so I can tell it to you. When I was playing golf with my father-in-law, I hit a putt and went way past the hole, way too strong. And, just, you've done that before, Mario. You're getting through.
And then you're still further away from your father-in-law. Here we call that you're a dead sheep, which means it's still you.
Yeah, the three worst words in golf are still your turn. That's right.
Still
but
you.
He said to me,
he's that sheep too.
So this putter goes off in my hands, and he called it a teenage dick. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, well, it went off in your hands. So anyway, that's the joke. I dedicate that to my father-in-law, Pete Bergener. Anyway, so yeah, let's go. Okay. These are just footnotes.
All right.
If anyone wants to look this stuff up, we're almost done. Now we got to think, why so much silver? Why is the U.S. just going through this ridiculous amount of silver and then calling it wood treatment or dental implants or silver clothing or bandages or colonial?
Like, I guess we'll come to that at the end, why you think they're doing that and your conclusions. But what do we got here? U.S. versus
well, this shows you the insatiable appetite for aerospace rockets and bombs and missiles and torpedoes and tanks and fighter crafts. Look at that budget. It's bigger than the next 9 combined, know?
Well, now the interest on the federal debt is going above that budget. It's a trillion.
Yeah, that's right. We have that to look forward to. I guess that's another good reason to stack.
I thought it was China and Russia that were like the big military spenders.
Yeah, the big war hawks. I remember when Bush had the axis of evil, and it was always anyone that was trading outside the US dollar.
Yeah.
I remember you wrote this. You had a great. I remember this when someone had posted recently, you said, I can't recall when Iran invaded another country. You said that, didn't you?
Yeah.
I have a photographic memory for Twitter because everyone on Twitter hates me. So I just stay off of it lately.
No, I think Bush said he had like a slip. He said something instead of saying that Putin invaded Ukraine illegally, he said that Putin invaded Iraq illegally, just like he did.
Yeah. They got a lot of gold when they did that. When you go to, we'll get to the war profiteers. So now, why are you spending so much money on defense, U.S.? This just keeps going and going. Yep. One more slide. I think there's 2 or 3 more. And then So Ben Norton wrote, there's been 251 interventions, operations, covert deals. That's a very small time window. If you take the vast span of human
where haven't they intervened and acted? I mean, it's all is the red countries where they haven't, or
no, where they have. It's everywhere but US and Canada and of course
the Scandinavian
South Africa and Australia and Japan, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just brutal. So now I'm going to lay out the thesis. They drained the stockpile because of the massive use in aerospace, military, and other heavy industrial uses. But to cover it up, they abolished the United States Bureau of Mines. At the same time, the DOD stops reporting that silver is critical for military. We get stuck with these bogus categories that are measly, minuscule, and statistically abnormal or insignificant relative by a magnitude of 15 to 25 times. And why is on the next slide. They do it because of this. Defense contractors and captains of industry typically are headed by boards that sit on bank boards as well. They have dual roles. Here in Pittsburgh, Carnegie, or during the Gilded Age, was a war profiteer, but also sat on all the bank boards. You got guys like Warren Buffett. He controls the Burlington Northern Railroad. here in the US, but also sits on bank boards. So there's two different so these people on bank boards are also engaged in the derivative paper versions, or what we call short selling, holding massive short positions in silver. And on the last slide, I'll give you the poster child of a person who sits on bank boards and has the worst media company. We've all been stuck with him.
And I would add that the regulators, the CFTC, even the SEC, they work for the big banks.
Yeah, they're complicit in this.
Even,
That's right. In fact, you'll work 10 years on the bank board and then you go over to the regulation side. We saw
guy, what's his name? The head of CFTC now.
Ross.
Yeah, he said, "Oh, we had to tamp down the silver price." He never says we had to support the silver price. It's always goes up. Next.
Yeah, one more. This is the smoking gun.
Good old Michael Bloomberg. He also part of this C40, which is this climate change thing. You know, that actually the mayor of London, which very few people like, Sadiq Khan, he's the head of C40 this year. I remember when he was mayor of New York, he tried to stop people from drinking soda, sugary soda. He's like a kind of a dictator, I would say. But anyway, I'll let you.
No, that's good. Mr. Bloomberg, I'm not picking on you necessarily, but your network sucks. You can't watch it for a minute without them doing naked cartwheels across the stage or the broadcast set over any tech stock, NVIDIA darling, or the Magnificent Seven that lost over 50% last year.
What's the Defense Innovation Board?
That's my point, is these guys have dual roles. They usually sit on bank boards as well as...
Is he involved in anything to do with silver or defense?
Yeah, he's the chair of the Defense Innovation Board. I mean, maybe not now.
Is that part of the U.S. government?
Yeah, they always have these. They'll be on the board of Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Halliburton back in the day. It's always having those two, just like the guy you mentioned at the beginning of the Steeler.
Yeah.
What's his name? We got to give him some credit.
Charles Savoy. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
The thing is, Bloomberg also, of course, owns Bloomberg Media and TV, so business channel. So when they report on silver, I'm sure people are not going to start talking about all the silver that the defense industry needs.
When they report on gold or silver, they say that it's a boomer rock, it's an ancient relic, it's going to go to zero, and they always show it as a commodity right next to pork bellies. I'm serious. That's my opinion.
Is this the last one?
That's all I got today. I mean,
yeah. So I guess to me, it seems like, the strategy of a head fake. You know, they don't want you to look at silver as a defense or, industrial metal like the Chinese look at it. They want you to think it's just a useless, well, not useless, but it's just used for clothing and like colloidal silver and things like that. But and they're trying to hide the, I guess the excuse is national defense.
Right. As if that's the whole thing that's so funny. It's like, if I could find this research, it's like, let's keep this top, military secret for national security. It's like everyone knows, whether you're in China, Russia, India, Pakistan, North Korea, it doesn't matter, that silver, that's just science. Silver's on the periodic table of elements. Gold is a noble metal, meaning it's really does the best in nature against, corrosion proof. So we know that these things happen whether you're, regardless of your race, ethnicity, color, creed, religion, faith, or gender. That's silver. It's the properties of silver.
Yeah.
Yet somehow we get stuck with the bandages. So I didn't know that when I go to Walgreens today, I'm going to have to ask for those silver bandages, and then later at TJ Maxx for where this cotton is getting. I need something that breathes a little better.
Yeah. Any opinion on the ETFs? I personally think the SOVs are used as a valve to keep people away from physical. Is that how you see it too?
Well, I've heard some people say SLV is not a good way to play silver. I would agree with them. I like physical, and your friends like Andy Scheckman and my boss, Stefan at Money Metals, or wherever you buy it, your local coin store. I love them too. I mean, I think identifying a good miner is a good way to get a leverage play out of silver, as long as you know they have, good management, good ore grade, and in a good jurisdiction. Because we're going to need a lot more silver. That we are in a deficit. It's been underreported. And I want to say something. It's not this. The Silver Institute, I think, does a good job. I just think that they've been handed a lot of bad data. So this isn't on them. This is more on what I consider, once again, the U.S. government gaslighting the citizens and using all these bureaus to shuffle around. Yeah. They're trying to move the target around.
Obfuscation, I guess.
Yeah, that's the right word.
So what about, I mean, people are going to be asking now, what do you think is going to wake people up to this fact that silver is a lot more important? And then people are going to realize, well, I need some, and then drive the price higher. Or
yeah,
I guess interviews like this might help, but we're just like on YouTube. I do have quite a few followers, but this is not mainstream. So what do you think could trigger, the rightful, rightful move to value silver fairly?
Well, if without, the mainstream media, I think I saw a table the other day where in America, only 6 media companies are working. And it's Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, a few others. And they each do the same thing. They each pick up a movie studio, a streaming service, and a couple other medias, and not counting Scripps Howard and Hearst Media Group and the Gannett Group that owns USA Today. So if they're all locked in and they're pretty much drank the Kool-Aid and have to read the scripts the government hands them, it is you, Mario. That's why I begged to get on the show. I mean, it is you. It's you, and it's some of your friends that have channels like this. I've tried to do YouTube before, but it's impossible to get your subscribers up. So my hat's off to you for doing that. It's impossible, and the amount of work you have to do. But I would say the real aha moment will be, I wrote an article about 3 months ago. It's on silverseek.com on that silver is on the brink of extinction. And that news is getting out that, and the Visual Capitalist, I think, had a graphic on it, that I think we have till 2030, unless new discoveries are made.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about that as well, because the Oriental Ghost talked about that, and countries like Mexico and Poland, their reserves are dwindling, and there are other countries that have silver underground, but the price is so low that there has been so little exploration for silver. And plus, a lot of the silver that's could be used as scrap is really difficult to recycle, because it's too expensive. It's not worth it. So I agree with you. It's not that silver is going to disappear, but there won't be enough because people haven't been extracting or exploring for it.
Yeah, and I think the retail stacker, all your viewers, I think Doug Casey said it once. Really, I like the way he said it. Now, he was talking about gold, but there are about 6.8 billion ounces of gold above ground, and with gold, all the gold that's ever been mined is kind of still there because people don't really lose it.
Oh yeah, it's
and he goes, so there's pretty much an ounce of gold for each person on planet Earth. And he goes, so you'll want to get a little more than that. Now with silver, because of the industrial uses, it varies quite a bit. But they're only pulling silver for every 1 ounce of gold. They're only pulling 9 out of the ground. right now. And that's kind of been the historical mean. So you're absolutely right, Mario. When you say the cost of production is getting too close to the spot price, there's no incentive for these silver miners right now.
No.
That makes your silver more valuable. It will change. You cannot keep a lid on these kind of things. You cannot. That's why market manipulation or price fixing never works. Because
and for there's going to be a lot of people who are going to comment and say, well, silver hasn't done anything. But when I started buying it, it was $4.50, $5, $6. So it has taken a long time. But I think if you look back to 1980, we have that huge teacup and handle formation. And I think someone technical analyst I saw a few weeks ago, he said that that signifies that the water is like boiling, slowly simmering, in that teacup, and eventually it would just boil and go up.
Right. So, or they used to say it this way with a cup and handle, that the wider the base, the higher the space.
Yeah.
So that's called, it's consolidating.
Oh, yeah.
You got to remember that silver was flat on the year in 2022. So was gold. They were.
I guess the thing I would say is that silver's so cheap that even if it weren't to do what we think it should do, you're still not really going to lose out, and you still have a really nice metal,
Right. And are you really buying it, or are you just trading in paper instruments for?
I agree. Yeah. You're just redeeming rubbish, basically irredeemable debt, empty promises for something real.
Right. That's probably the best way to look at it. And I would say if it was flat in 2022 and Facebook was down 50 or 60%, it did 60% better than Facebook. So, there's a lot of ways to look at it, but
great.
I really appreciate you.
Any last word? No, that's fine. Any
last words? Oh, don't say that. My last words are,
no,
I apologize to the government.
No.
This was all made up.
Any final comments to the viewers?
I'll circle back again when I have the gold side of this story, and maybe drop the link of this article in the description field. And
where can the viewers read your work? Is it in the Substack? Is it?
It'll be, I'm going to send you the link.
Okay, it's the Pickaxe.
It's called the pickaxe.substack.com.
Yeah, I'm going to put it below in the description of this video or interview. So if you guys want to look at John's work, just click on that link. So John, thank you for coming on. I know you invited yourself, but I don't mind if you have something interesting to talk about, contact me.
Okay, Mario, keep golfing, keep it in the short grass, as they say, and remember the joke about if you.
Yeah,
I won't talk about it.
That's okay.
All right, stay awesome.
You too.
All right.